All right, Jesse White. I just thought I'd respond to your comment with a quick little video here. One thing, it helps me create content for my channel, but it also helps me avoid being misunderstood in the things that I have to say. On top of that, I find that people on Facebook, well, in life in general now, they have a very short attention span. So when I type out everything to make sure that my point is very clear and concise, hard to misunderstand, I end up with a whole bunch of letters that look like ants marching across a page, So I wanted to shoot a quick video here. You say here in your comment that you're a pastor. So that's interesting. But yeah, I looked at your profile. It didn't indicate where you are a pastor at, as far as whether or not you're a pastor in a church or not, as far as in a pulpit. And I understand that being a pastor does not necessarily mean that you have to have a pulpit, given that pastor is an office of the church. And there are many people who do pastoring who are not employed in any capacity by a church, an actual church. So I was just curious as to where you pastored at. I'm not sure about that. But the lady who made the original post, which I think itself is also a faulty mindset, but it kind of also plays into what I'm about to say about your comment here. But the lady who made the post was asking for recommendations on a good Bible-believing, Bible-preaching, pastor-led, strong church body that she could become a part of. That's what she was asking for. She was asking for directions to a church body that she could join to. She was looking for some leadership and direction, which is a good thing. So I find it interesting that your response here is to start off saying, I am a pastor, and then going into a sort of a finger wagging about the behavior of other people in the comments. I didn't read all the comments, but I'm assuming that there were people there that were saying that it was perfectly acceptable, or that it was possible or whatever to go to church without being at a church, or to worship. Because I hear that a lot. I don't have to go to church to worship. I don't have to go to church to serve the Lord. I don't have to go to church to be a good Christian. And I don't agree with that sentiment. So I get what you're saying, but I just want to make the point that the reason that a lot of people, especially men, are not really interested in going to church today, regardless of where they stand on a faith issue, is because the church has become so feminine, feminist-led, even if it's males, feminine-minded, feminized. It's become so structured and formatted in themes and behaviors and lingo and such that are very, very, very appealing to women, that it ends up alienating men. You see, there's so much in sermons today that centers on how it feels to be a Christian, how the Lord brings you joy unspeakable, full of, all that kind of stuff, how the weight is lifted off of your shoulders, all of these emotional themes. And there's so much in church too about being nice, like nice and polite and gentle. All of that sort of stuff is elevated to the level as if they're virtues, as if it's virtuous to not offend anyone, or not make anyone uncomfortable, or not criticize anyone, you see. And it seems like it ends up with so much of the masculinity of the gospel, the masculine mindset and behavior and stuff ends up getting really criticized and vilified into what's referred to as hellfire and brimstone. And I'm sure that you probably don't realize this and probably won't agree with what I'm about to say. But your comment here has all of the markers of a man who is trying his best to help out and do what is good and right and biblical and bring people to the Lord and that sort of stuff. But it is chocked full of feminine mindset. And so I'm not trying to beat you up or criticize you or put you down or anything. I'm trying to help you. And the reason I'm trying to help you is not because I want to be right. Dang, you just think you're right about everything. You just want to control people. You just want to make people do things the way you want to do. Anything you don't like is feminine. Anything you like is masculine. And blah, 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 blah. I've heard it and heard it and heard it for decades. But the fact of the matter is that as a masculine man, I am trying to help you. So, because that's what masculinity does. Masculinity builds, masculinity leads, masculinity guides, masculinity protects, masculinity provides. So, I hope this doesn't get you offended. Hope it didn't hurt your feelings, whatever. I hope you can respond to this masculinely. Okay, but here it is. First, you come in saying, I am a pastor. Okay, that's something that women do a lot when they try to enter into a situation and they want to express their opinion. Is they'll begin by announcing their credentials. You see, I am a pastor. In the masculine world, we work in hierarchies. So what that means is we show up and we collaborate and we just go to work. And our position within the group of people that we're working with, whether we're leading them or whether we're co-working with them or whatever, our position develops naturally within that hierarchy. We don't have to show up and say, I am the leader. I am more qualified than you. My opinion has more weight and such because of this position that I hold. We don't ground and found our authority to lead based on some title we have. That comes from the feminine world. And then your next few words are hyper feminine. And it breaks my heart. You see, it's that declaration of emotion that, again, is very feminine because it's saying, I am hurt. I am emotional. Your behavior has somehow or another bothered me, made me uncomfortable. That's very feminine because naturally in the civilization, people don't like to see women hurt or women upset or women sad or whatever. Masculine people don't do that. We don't show up and we say, hi, I'm the pastor, and it breaks my heart, because men understand that the world in general, and even people in the church for the most part, don't really care about your titles, and they don't really care about, what hurt your feelings. It's just hyper feminine. And so, and when I say effeminate, I don't mean effeminate. I don't mean prissy. I don't mean that it's like homosexual acting or anything like that. That's not what I mean. I mean, it's just a feminine way of thinking where we communicate in our emotions. And this is what so much of the Protestant church has moved to, unfortunately. It's like everything has to be wrapped up and decorated and polished up to appeal to women. So when pastors, which you claim yourself to be, show up in the pulpit or in any other ministry capacity, and they say things like, oh, it just breaks my heart for so many who believe, and this, that, and the third like that, women love that. Because that's one of the biggest complaints that women have about men, is that we're not what they've come to start calling in the last few years emotionally mature, emotionally aware. And women love that. So when the pastor shows up and starts talking about how it breaks my heart, women just say, oh, he's so in touch with his feelings. Oh, that's so good that he's reached that level of awareness and all of that. But that's not masculine leadership. And the men who will submit to that sort of a leadership are going to be other feminized men. And so that causes the church to become more and more gynocentric around women, which is a completely unbiblical trait to have in a church, you see. So just because there are other males in the church doesn't mean that the church is not feminine. It just means it's attracting feminine women. Because I used to serve in ministry, pal. I used to serve in different degrees of pastoral positions, and I can tell you 150% that if you don't use this kind of language and thinking, the church will not tolerate you by and large. My heart breaks for so many who believe they do not need to gather at the church. My heart breaks for so many that it's just, plus women lack the physical ability to leverage violence because women's strength, their physical strength is in their lower body and not their upper body like men. So they have to resort to using, especially because women are typically much smaller than men, they have to resort to using these sort of things like, shame and guilt and insults and character assassination, emotional manipulation, innuendo, gossip, stuff like that. They have to use those things to try to leverage power in the culture because they lack physical strength and they lack physical dominance. So instead of just coming out and saying, hey, y'all are wrong, you can say, hey, y'all are wrong, y'all shouldn't do this. See, that's the masculine way. Is a man just shows up because masculinity is a leader, it's a builder, it's a protector, will just show up and say, y'all are wrong for believing this. Your belief in such and such is wrong. Women can't do that because women, by and large, are in need of resources. They're in need of protection. And the masculine is the protector and the provider that the feminine needs. So the feminine has to be very carefully choosing their words that they don't offend someone because they want to be the prettiest girl in the room. I'm speaking on a general metaphorical level. They want to be the prettiest girl in the room, or they want to be as close to the prettiest girl in the room. If not the prettiest, the second prettiest, or the third prettiest, or the fourth. They want to garner favor socially so that their needs can be met by the masculine to whatever degree. Even if the prettiest girl gets most of the resources, the second prettiest, third prettiest, fourth prettiest, fifth prettiest, right on down the line, they'll still get some leftovers as long as they're not the ugliest or one of the ugliest girls in the room. And of course, prettiest and ugliest girls in the room, again, I'm using a metaphor for the behaviors to make themselves appealing to others. See, so they end up using this shame, insult, guilt, innuendo, rumors, all that sort of stuff to try to do this feminine poetry so that they can still be just as, rude, manipulative, scheming, whatever, as men do who are masculine, who stand up and they say, hey, y'all are wrong. Instead of saying that, the female and the feminine-minded man will say, it breaks my heart for so many who believe they do not need to gather as the church. And then when someone responds to the feminine-minded man or the woman, are you trying to tell me that you know more about what I should do than you should do? Are you trying to tell me what I'm doing wrong? Who the heck are you? Well, then the feminine-minded person, because they didn't come right out and say it, they can say, oh, no. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. I'm not saying you're wrong because that's really between you and the Lord. I'm just telling you that it made me sad. And you don't want me to be sad, do you? So if you want to be a good person, then you should do things to make me less sad because that's the godly and good thing to do. I'm not trying to boss you around. I'm just telling you how your behavior affects me, and it makes me sad. And it makes me sad because I'm a good person. Do you see how manipulative that is? That's how the feminine mind communicates. The masculine mind comes right out and just lays down the smack. Men did not build civilization that we have today by using these sorts of feminine wordplay games to try to manipulate people. I'm trying to help you, brother. And then you go through with this whole lecture that nobody asked for. This lady was asking for guidance to go to a good Bible-believing she probably doesn't realize it, but a masculine church that's going to stand up and let their yes mean yes and their no mean no, she's asking for that. But instead of that, I guess you read comments of people that were probably saying that she didn't have to go to church to be a good Christian, or that God would hear her right there in her living room if she wanted to pray or whatever. Maybe those were the comments we're saying. And so here you come using, I know what you were probably taught and trained into doing, which is leveraging the feminine vocabulary, the feminine poetry, the cunningness of the feminine wordplay. Oh, I'm a pastor, and my heart just breaks for so many. It just breaks for them. It's such emotional manipulation, man. And then you go into this finger wagging for people you don't even know. I mean, you have no authority over these people to teach them anything. So declaring I'm a pastor, that doesn't mean anything, man. I mean, this is not how discipleship was done in Scripture. Your last line down here, there is a difference in merely being a believer versus becoming a disciple. The disciples didn't show up. You can't read in any of the 4 Gospels or the book of Acts where any of the disciples showed up to non-believers and declared, I'm a disciple, so you need to listen to me. Or I'm an apostle. They didn't. That's just not the way it worked. But here you are, I'm a pastor. And you've hurt my feelings. So now I'm going to wag my finger and tell you what the church means. And then you go through different gifts of the Spirit are given to different members. So we must come together to benefit from them. The bread and the cup is not to be taken alone. It is the communion or common union. By the way, the word communion is not the 2 words common union put together. That's not how it works. Go look up the etymology of the word, man. There's something in there. I know that works really good when you're telling that to people who aren't very educated in the linguistics of it, the etymology of it, but that we all share together, even if only 2 or 3 of us are willing to come together in his name. There is a difference in merely being a believer versus being a disciple. And then you throw in this Jewish word that's really out of place, this Hebrew word that's really out of place. Shalom, my friends. That way it can make you sound very, very well trained and very deep and very authoritative. You know, you must really know what you're talking about because you threw out this ancient word. All of that is just one big ball of feminine communication coming from a male who has declared himself to be a leader in the church, which you may be. You may be a pastor of a church somewhere. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to beat you up, man. I'm trying to help you. That's what the masculine world does. The masculine tries to work within a hierarchy in order to develop and improve one another. As iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another, right? So that we can provide for and protect our communities. And a huge weakness in our churches is stuff like this feminine way of communication, this feminine way of trying to lead people. Women aren't leaders, man. They're not leaders. They're leaders of one another and children, but they're not leaders of the church. So even when someone with the penis is trying to lead in the same methods and techniques and tools that women use, it's still bad leadership. The presence of the testicles do not mean that a man's going to be a good leader when he's trying to lead using the tools of leadership that women use. Do you see what I'm saying? You get that correlation? And when pastors do this kind of stuff right here, when they're trying to lead, y'all sincerely think that y'all are leading people. I know y'all mean well, but this whole format is how women lead children. These are the words and the syntax and the rhetorical structures of a mother or an elementary kindergarten school teacher or something along those lines talking to a group of ill-behaved children. I mean, look at it. You're going through trying to make sure that everybody knows what the word means, and then you start kind of lecturing about the bread and the cup, and there's a difference in a believer and a disciple. And those are the words of a mother or some woman talking to children who are under her charge. Those are not the words of a masculine person standing up, trying to lead and build and call people to perform and to do what is right and good and true and just and holy. Not in a masculine way, it's not. So don't be hating me. I'm just trying to help out. I don't even know who you are. I mean well. I'm happy to hear back from you, though, and I'm Dane.